Hi, everybody, and hi, Limitless family. Today, I'm excited to have a very special guest on the Limitless Show, where we're talking always about how we can break through limitation and live that limitless life. And so I've got a dear friend of myself and my husband's, Tom D'Addario. He is with me today on Limitless, and he has some amazing experience, wisdom in terms of leadership. And recently he gave me his book that he wrote. He's written a few, but the book that he gave me is called A Leader's Handbook for Success, 17 Traits of a Successful Leader. Now, I don't think we're going to get into all 17, but Tom, I just want to welcome you onto Limitless. And you've got a lot of experience in the new home industry. So in basically selling real estate, selling new homes, correct? You can
Correct.
tell us a bit more. And your experiences in sales, management, leadership, so many things. And through this lifetime career, you've been able to observe yourself, observe others, and really kind of understand some different leadership traits. So welcome to the show. And we look forward to just hearing some of your pearls of wisdom.
Well, it's great to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity that you're giving me today.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let me just start off with the question about the book that you've written, and it's about 17 traits of successful leaders. And one of the things I read in there that you define the difference between a boss, a manager, and a leader. Is that correct?
Yep.
Can you share with me why do you define them differently, and what is the definition of each one?
So when we talk about a boss is somebody that you report to. They don't have a lot invested in you as the person as a direct report. They oftentimes aren't really responsible for planning, goals, setting goals, working with you and bringing you up in terms of training and things like that. So they're kind of there, and they're your boss. The manager is someone that, again, you report to, but has a little bit more responsibility. So they'll get a little bit more involved in setting the company's direction and goals, and then put together perhaps some level of training. The leader is really the pinnacle of those three. And the leader is someone that is very invested in the people that report to them, is intimately involved in setting the culture of the group that he works with, which is super important, because everything comes down from the top. Everything always comes down from the top. All eyes are always up. And he is responsible for developing not just the plans for success in the organization, the goals, profit and loss and all those things, but he or she is able to really develop a level of trust. And a lot of what's in this book, a lot of the 17 traits really are based on two-way trust. You trust that that person has your best interest, and that person, your manager, your leader, trust that you understand the direction and understand that you can come to them when you have issues or you have troubles or you're not, something's not working right, or opposite, if you have some really good ideas. A good leader is always open to getting input back from their team. So that's really the difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, just to make sure I'm getting your point, and also our audience, it sounds to me like you're saying a person could be in they're in a role, let's say, over you, or you have people under you, and they are technically the boss. That would be like the first level. But then you were asking ourselves, let's put it in our own leadership. Maybe we can direct it at ourselves, right? If I have a leadership role or a position, am I just being a boss where it's just like transactions and overseeing what needs to be done? Or am I really managing, like kind of going up to the next level? Or am I being a leader? Is that what you're saying? Like it's same position, but more of mindset and how you're actually leading? Is that how you're defining that? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So basically, even if we are the boss, because that could just be position, are we managing, or are we going into those next levels of truly being a great leader, right? And that's what your book is about, is how to be a successful and great leader. That's really
Sure.
good. Yeah.
So
I think,
just dovetailing on what you just said. So, a manager can make people do things, and a boss can make people do things because they have
Position.
exactly, because of the
The position.
positional power that they have. A
Right.
leader doesn't. A leader he wants to lead them.
Yeah, that's good.
A person isn't always going to follow, so to speak, a boss or a manager, but they will follow a leader, and they'll be excited to follow the leader.
Mhm.
And that is not, that's hard to do. That's hard to
Mhm.
get to that level. And that's obviously what we're going to talk about today.
True. And I think that's good. If I can look at my own leadership and, people around me that I see lead. Of course, there's times we have to be like strict, and from our position, we have to say,
Absolutely. Yep.
you have to say, do this. But it's not like, that's not the pinnacle of leadership, is it? That's not where we want to be aiming for.
Correct.
We don't want to just be using our position to make things get done. It calls for it at times, because it also depends on the employee, the staff, and there's times you have to kind of be a bit hard. But what we should always be reaching for and growing in is our leadership skills, which is influence and heart and people wanting to. Yeah, I really like that distinction.
Yeah.
And then really, for anybody that's watching this, then you can ask yourself that, like, how am I leading? Am I just doing it from a positional point of view, or am I doing it from heart and passion, and am I growing in influence? That's awesome.
Right.
It reminds me of something I read here in your book as well, about kind of the difference of fear-based leadership, and what would be the other one, like, influential based leadership.
Sure.
What's the difference from your experience? Have you been in places or in companies where it's more like fear-based?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was that like?
To pretty extreme levels in some cases. Which of course I didn't stay there, because that's not, that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
So there was a time when there was it was actually my boss's boss. I had a really good boss. She was a wonderful leader. Her boss was, he would threaten, he would coerce, he would, there's a whole section here about praising in public and punishing in private. He sort of did the opposite. He would chastise people in front of the whole management team. It was actually horrible. And the worst part of it was, he really wasn't as good as he thought he was in terms of how to get things done, how to make the business successful. And so when you looked, from my position, there was no motivation on my part to do anything, because I knew he was going to jump in and say, you're doing it wrong. That's not that's not the best way to do it. When of course I had decades of experience, and I knew what to do, and I knew how to reach goals and all that, all those kinds of things. And so I didn't stay there. I left because it was just not the environment that I wanted to be in. I had another boss, and we talked about this in here too. He was a smart guy, and he was a nice guy, but he couldn't stop lying. We were all constantly catching him making stuff up, just flat making stuff up. And the sad part was, he didn't have to. He just never. And I was like, I thought to myself, you didn't have to make that up. Just sit down and tell me what's going on. But he was
trying to make it better than it was, or what was the lie?
I think that he thought the only way he could get someone to follow what he wanted to do was to make something up, such as, my boss said, if this doesn't get done, there's going to be problems, or, those kinds of things like that. And he didn't have to do all that stuff, because in this situation, I actually knew his boss pretty good. And I know that person would never do that. Right. Yeah. So it's things like that as I, went through this whole career, that I would just shake my head and go, I don't understand why people do this. And conversely, I had really great bosses that would just sit down and just to kind of, pick up on one of the things you said, when they had to make the tough calls, they would sit down and talk to us and go, look, you're not going to like this, but we got to do it.
Right.
And we said, okay, because we trusted that person. We knew that was the edict. We knew it had to get done. And in the grand scheme of things, it was a very little deal. You know, it wasn't, it was an isolated incident, you know, but if it was a boss or a manager, he'd probably call in sick. Right? As opposed to a leader, we were like, okay, I'll be there and I'm going to be there and I'm going to get it done and we're going to get through it. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing about fear-based leadership, I was thinking about this in different ones that I, you know, where I've been around too. We have that term walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
And I think you're in that fear-based environment, and maybe it's best that we just direct it back to ourselves, that we don't want to be leaders that create this kind of culture. We don't want to be in a culture, but if we're the leader in creating a culture, we don't want people to always feel like they're on eggshells. And am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get in trouble? You know, it needs to be, I mean, people need to respect, but not fear. And I have seen over the years too, where people try to lead strong, but it's based out of everybody's more in fear of what's going to happen or when they're going to get angry or when, you know what I mean? There's no positivity, or there's very little positivity. And that's just not the kind of leadership that we want. We want to grow or be. So based on your book here, you have 17 traits of a successful leader. What's one of the top ones that you would say, because we can let people read your book, so we're not going to get into all 17 traits, you know, but what's one of the top ones that you would say is a trait to cultivate in our lives, organizations, ministries, you know, companies, in being a good leader?
So that's an easy answer. And there are several traits that speak to this, but it's all about the people you hire, period. End of the story. You are only as good as your team. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how talented you are. If you don't have a team that is going to follow your goals and come alongside you so that you can be successful, you're never going to get anything done. So it's really all about, you know, how do you hire the right person? Once you hire them, you know, what training do you provide? What kind of culture? And to get back to the fear-based, you know, is it a safe place to make mistakes? I mean, I've worked for people, like you said, that, oh my God, I'm afraid to do anything because they're going to chew my head off, right? As opposed to being able to go to your boss and go, hey, I screwed this up. Here's what I thought was going to happen. Here's what happened. And, you know, the leader was, yeah, you did, you screwed it up. He goes, or she goes, what are we going to do moving forward so that doesn't happen again? And what are we going to do to take care of that right now? And so it was an environment where you were encouraged to try things because that's the only way you're going to grow. And you knew that you weren't going to get your head chewed off if it didn't go exactly according to plan. But it's absolutely about the people that report to you.
You know what? I have to, as you say that, I'm like, my heart is like, yes, because I believe in global impact. All my global impactors out there that are watching, our team, we have such an amazing team. You know, people, sometimes they say to me, oh, look what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, but look what my team does. And really, even on this note, because I know they're all watching this, I mean, we have an amazing team, and I thank my team, because you're right. You can't get a vision done without people around that'll all be, you know, in their role, in their position, with heart, and do it with excellence. And so I love that point about, you know, hiring the right people, having the right team members, creating that right, you know, that culture. I think that's so, you know, that's so important. That's so important.
Yep.
One last question before we wind down. This show is called Limitless, or broadcast is called Limitless. What's one of the things in your life, what that was maybe a barrier, a limiting belief, something that was in your life that you had previously, and you really overcome it and now walking in success?
So from a leadership standpoint, I'll touch on two things. From a leadership standpoint, in the industry that I was in, the division presidents, although I was division president once, so I can't say it never happened to me, but for the most part, they wanted folks that had high degrees, high college degrees, not just a 4-year, but they wanted a master's and, you know, whatever, and master's in business or finance and that kind of stuff like that. So oftentimes when those opportunities came up, I wasn't really even considered because I had, a bachelor's degree, because some things that happened in my life prevented me from going to college and finishing and all stuff like that. And what was a bit of a challenge for me is when I worked for people that maybe had the degrees, but they really weren't very good leaders. And so that was a bit of a challenge for me. And there's something called managing upward. And managing upward is when you help that person that you report to become better. There's a little bit of an art to that, because you don't want to come across as paternal or maternal type, advice. But just suggesting, hey, here's another way to think about that, or here's another way to think about that, to help them really improve. And that worked for me many times when I was in those situations. So that was sort of one. So one of the things that I did was, in writing this book and my first book, which was more on the how to sell a home, I really got my reputation for being a trainer started to grow. And I've been asked to do some video conferencing. A friend of mine who has a training company, we've done some events together. We have an event coming up in the fall where I'm going to be actually, instead of sales training, I'm actually going to be doing the leadership stuff. So it all worked out fine for me. It really, at the end of the day, God had a plan for me, and I maybe didn't really understand it at sometimes, but I just kept plowing forward, and it became clear at the end. My father, as I look back, my father was a brilliant man, a brilliant man, but he was always a good teacher. He always took the time to kind of not just show us something, but show us how it worked. And I think I inherited that teaching part from him. So of all the things a leader has to do, the training part of it was always the part for me that was the most fun. And so, when we put this book together, part of it was just to share those ideas, but also to like on this podcast, to share them with folks like, other leaders that are out there.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, just one thing that I always love to look at is mindset, right? And so limitation was, I don't have a 4-year degree, right? So whether it's in your own mindset or the way others were looking at you, which sometimes that is, it's external, but I think you would probably agree what's most important is how we're looking at it. And if we let something like that be our limitation, it will be our limitation because we believe it. Oh, I don't have a 4-year degree, so therefore I'm not going to be accepted. But it sounds like you didn't do that. You didn't have the 4-year degree in an environment where mostly people, they must have those, but you didn't let that limit you in your mindset. You kept going, you broke through, you proved yourself, you were successful. And like you said, God had that call on your life. So would that be a proper way to kind of look at that? Because is that right?
Absolutely. And here's the other part of it. Of all the managers I've ever had, I'm the only one that ever wrote a book.
You know what? And I love that too, because so often we think we have to have this, and this to have success. And that's really not true. We can actually look at, and education and degrees are awesome. You know what I mean? Like they can, I have a 4-year degree, but I never even went down the path of, I have an engineering degree. I think you know that, but I've never been an engineer. I've always been in the ministry, charity world, nonprofit, NGO world, but I used what we have to do. It's more about mindset, thinking, and education, and we can apply that to wherever. It doesn't matter necessarily the degree that's on our hanging on the wall, because we also know a lot of people have degrees and then did nothing.
Right.
So anyway, so it goes back to our mindset, and I love that. And like you said, you wrote a book, and I want to say congrats. You wrote what? Several books, or you wrote one book that you redid, and then now this.
So the first book was about how to sell a house.
Right.
This is the second edition.
Second edition.
Yeah.
And then this is the second book, right?
And then this is technically the second. Yeah, technically the second book.
Well, you inspired me, because I think I have a book in me. Most people tell me, Amy, you need to write a book, and I have not done it yet, Tom. So
Let me give you a tip that I was given.
Okay.
If you think of the end product, it's overwhelming, it's daunting. Like I have to finish it. I have to have a finished book. But if you just sort of sit down and you do even one page a week.
Right. Something, huh?
Because eventually what happens is you'll start to do one page a day. And then pretty soon you're going to be doing many pages a day.
Right.
So the trick is just start. Just start, take a piece of paper, start writing your thoughts down, and then set a time once a week to do that. And before you know it, 50 days go by, you got a 50-page book pretty much done. So, but if you think about the end of it, it's daunting. So you just got to take it easy.
True.
Go slow.
And that's true in anything in life we want to get done, right? Just start. Just start.
Zig Ziglar says, inch by inch, it's a cinch. Mile by mile, it's a trial.
Wow.
So just take it a little bit at a time.
That's very good. Awesome. Well, that's a great way for us to end our interview. Thank you for all of your wisdom, your experience. I know you have so much more that you can share with us. And also it's in the book. People can get your book on, how could they get your book? If they want
any of the normal Amazon online stuff, you can get the e-version or the hard copy. Books A Million, those Apple iBooks, all those kinds of things. It's all available. Kindle, all that. Pretty much anywhere you can get an e-reader, it's available.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that you've given us here at Limitless. And I'm grateful. Okay, everybody. Thank you, Limitless family. And we'll see you on our next episode. Okay, bye.
Take care.